Ow. Ooh. Wee. Greetings, hello. How do we know he is alive? Okay, so let's get into it. So yesterday, Mitch Mcconnell and his wife posted a proof of life, I guess, in the form of a few pictures. He is in the pictures. He's pointing towards today's newspaper. He's smiling. He looks perfectly alive. But I will tell you, the pictures are very weird. To me, it looks like there's just as good a chance as... to me, it looks like there's just as good a chance that he is alive as there is that he's just being propped up by his wife and aides in order to get them through until August, when Andy Beshear would be forced to choose between one of 3 Republican replacements for the office. I think that's what they're trying to do. I genuinely believe Mitch McConnell is probably not actually alive. Because at this point, with AI being what it is, with just photo editing technology being what it has been for so long, I cannot in my head rule out the possibility that they are faking this. And the fact that we have so little transparency in this situation means that we can't really trust what we're seeing. So I think there's a good chance that he is, like, functionally still dead. And, like, what I mean by that is that he might still be technically alive, but I think that the chance that he is still capable of, like, rational thought and decision-making and stuff like that is very, very low. Thank you for the gift. I appreciate that. From Amber is Anarchy. Thank you. Thank you for the finger heart. Hey, guys, I'm going to rehab tomorrow morning. No more thief self-help posting. Nice. That's good. I have a gift. Ooh, it was free. Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm trying to get this thing figured out. Well, whatever. It's charged 100% anyway. Okay. So yeah, who died? Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, who has been in the U.S. Senate since the early 2000s, I believe. Let's just I'm gonna have Gemini create me an overview of Lindsey Graham's life, so we can use it as a reference document. Create for me a timeline and overview of Lindsey Graham's life and political power, and especially his time in the U.S. Senate and how he contributed to foreign policy. Okay. We'll let that process out, and that'll give us a little bit of information to reference and cross-reference as we discuss it a little bit. But yeah, Lindsey Graham, ding dong, the witch is dead, and I don't know, like, they're gonna have to find somebody to replace him until they actually have the election this year. But I actually think that there's a very good chance that Dr. Annie, what is her name? What is her last? I'm forgetting her last name, but Annie something. I think there's a good chance that the Democrat could actually win it this time, because a lot of times when Republicans win time and time again in their districts, a lot of times when Democrats too. Like, in general, when a politician stays for like 2 or 3 terms in the Senate or something, there's a good chance that they'll just stay there until they die. That incumbency advantage is huge. But when you don't have a true incumbency advantage, when the voter doesn't recognize the name next to the R, it creates a much higher chance that they might vote for the person with the D next to their name, or vote for an independent senator or something like that. So I think that this is possibly the next best opportunity that we have now that the Graham-Plattner campaign has imploded and we're not going to win that Senate seat up in Maine, or at least it seems very unlikely that Democrats will, or anyone progressive will be able to cite that as a win. We can possibly look to South Carolina as an opportunity to try and shift the balance of the country's power back towards moderates at the very least, until we get enough power established that the actual progressives and leftists can start taking power meaningfully from them. How are you ever going to get married? What makes you think I want to get married? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. What business is it of yours? Your breath. Wow, it stinks. How would you know? Just wondering. Phoebe, will you marry me? Yes. Yes, Post. I will marry you. I will marry you, Post. I'll do it. I'll do it for you. So we are going to read off this this little timeline we've got of Lindsey Graham's life and his career and political power, especially his time in the U.S. Senate and how life contributed to how his life contributed to foreign policy. So let's start here. So he was born in Seneca, South Carolina, and graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law in 1981. Served 6.5 years on active duty as an Air Force lawyer, so Judge Advocate General, a jagoff, you might say. And he later transitioned to the Air Force Reserves, eventually retiring as a colonel in 2015. He was actually in the military for most of his political career, interestingly enough. He was actually deployed very briefly to both Iraq and Afghanistan, I believe. Then his rise to national prominence happened between 1993 and 2002, so this was right around the time when neoconservatism was becoming established as an ideology that was starting to dominate American politics. After a brief stint in the South Carolina State House, Graham was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1994. He gained widespread national media attention as a sharp-witted House impeachment manager during the 1998 and 1999 trial of President Bill Clinton, and he's basically been somebody worth talking about in American politics ever since then. Even though he was just a House member at the time, that and in his position in that and how he positioned himself to Republicans and the Republican establishment is one of the main things that has allowed him to carry up as much power as he did for as long as he did. Then we got, let's see here. In 2002 was when he was elected to the U.S. Senate, so well over 20 years ago. He ran to succeed the legendary long-serving segregationist-turned-Republican Senator Strom Thurmond. So just in case you need to know who exactly Lindsey Graham is, he's Strom Thurmond's replacement, okay? He's the guy who replaced Strom Thurmond. If you don't know what Strom Thurmond is, you don't know who that is, he was the guy who previously to Cory Booker held the longest record for a filibuster in the Senate. And you know why he was doing it? You know why? To advocate for the official, legally fucking justified separation of white and black people. He was doing it to advocate for segregation. So yeah, that is the legacy that Lindsey Graham represented. Then you got an inseparable political partnership with Senator John McCain. Together they traveled the world, serving as the Republican Party's foremost defenders of international alliances, troop deployments, and aggressive counterterrorism strategies. That was from 2003 to 2016. And you got the Trump realignment. After calling Donald Trump a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot, so he was actually right back then, During his own brief 2016 presidential bid, Graham dramatically pivoted to become one of Trump's closest advisors. As Judiciary Chair, he fiercely defended Brett Kavanaugh and steered Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court confirmation to completion just days before the 2020 election. And his final legislative chapter from 2022 to 2026, where he served as the chairman and ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee, helping shepherd major spending bills. He remained a fierce advocate for military support to Ukraine and pushed the second Trump administration toward military actions against Iran before his sudden death in July 2026. So if you get anything from this overview that we've read out, one of the things that you should be getting is the reality, the knowledge that we have been in this situation for a really long time, and that there are people of high political prominence that have been doing this shit for a really long time. But Lindsey Graham is one of the primary architects of this policy, the policy of continuous, needless foreign aggression towards the Middle East and endless, unequivocal support for Israel. Endless fucking support for Ukraine, despite the fact that it doesn't seem like they're actually making much fucking ground until recently. No support for a diplomatic option or a diplomatic avenue, just simply, nope, we're just gonna send as many weapons as we fucking can because we need the military-industrial complex to keep humming along. We're not gonna find a long-term solution to this conflict because Lindsey Graham was a warmonger. The real question becomes, will the people of South Carolina choose to continue the legacy of Strom Thurmond by electing yet another Republican to replace Lindsey Graham? Thank you, Manatee890. I met Krishna today in a situation. Oh, nice. Thank you for the $9.99. Oh, I met Krishna today. He's in a situation. I'm not sure. It's a mushroom situation, I think. Speaking ill of the dead, that's low, brother. I'm not your brother, number one. Number two, don't get mad at me for being honest about what Lindsey Graham did when he was alive at Empower. Be mad at Lindsey Graham for helping to make sure that your country is less safe and that there are more enemies of America abroad than there were before he came into office. Be mad at Donald Trump for making fun of Rob Reiner after he died for a week. Be mad at all the fucking MAGA Republicans who have normalized the complete toxicity of online discourse. Public figures can be talked about. They know the deal. Exactly. If you don't want to be talked about shittily in your death, I got two fucking pieces of advice for you. Number one, don't be a public figure. And number two, be a good person. You notice how there's very few people who talk shit on Princess Di? You know why there's very few people who talk shit on Princess Diana? Because she was a good person. Notice how people shit talk fucking Mother Teresa, though, because she was a fucking acolyte of suffering. So you kind of see how it matters what a person does in their life. Also, what's up, Rick? I haven't seen you in here in forever, so I'm glad to see you back. I assume I must have been pissing you off with some kind of shit livery a while ago, but I'm glad you're back now. One of the things, that I've kind of had to accept as I started streaming and started doing YouTube more is that I definitely still have some shit-lib tendencies. And every so often I do or say some shit that very much falls within that kind of thing. And sometimes I don't even realize it. Love your enemies. Oh, so you don't care about Ukraine? Ooh, this is gonna be hard. This is gonna be awesome. No, I was having a nervous breakdown again. Oh, okay. Well, I'm, horrible to hear that happened. I'm sorry, that's awful. I'm glad you're doing better now, though. That's good, at least, I guess. I'm glad to see you back, in any case. Love your enemies. Oh, so you don't care about Ukraine? I guess Russia are better? See, this is the fucking foul dichotomy in the mind of a warmonger, right? In the mind of a warmonger, one country is unequivocally evil, and the other country is unequivocally good. You know what I think about the average Russian? That they're just a normal fucking person like anyone else on this planet is. That they may or may not have personal leanings that make them convenient to the war effort or a roadblock to the war effort. may go either way, and you don't know a person until you meet them. So, like, no, I don't think that Russia is unequivocally evil. I think that the government of Russia is pretty objectively evil, as insofar as that can be determined and agreed upon by people. I think the Russian government, just like the American government, is a dictatorial fascist power that primarily exists to fuck its own people over and to make the wealthy elite in that country richer and richer. That doesn't mean that the solution in Ukraine is to endlessly fund an endless conflict. I'll tell you my solution for Ukraine. I think genuine diplomacy should be tried, and if there is some kind of land deal by which we can achieve a permanent end of hostilities and a direct path to NATO membership, then maybe that's something that should be on the table. If there's some kind of joint control area that could be established or something to keep both countries' interests aligned, that'd be great. And if not, if Russia just absolutely refuses to concede, if they just absolutely refuse to agree to our terms, then I think we should nuke them. I think we should do a preemptive strike. I'm not a fan of forever war. And I think if you're gonna do a war, it needs to be quick, needs to be fucking effective, needs to kill as few people as possible, and needs to end quick. So I think we would be better served, rather than doing an endless forever war between Ukraine and Russia, I think we would be better served doing a preemptive strike on all their nuclear facilities. Just being like, okay, Russia, you want to play like this? You don't have nukes anymore, bitch. There's no money outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg, basically. That's what I'm saying. People like to act like America and Russia would end the planet if one of them launched nukes at the other. No, that's just absurd. In fact, America loves to get people into negotiations under false pretenses and make people feel like their guard is down. Why couldn't we just do that with Russia and then nuke their fucking nuclear sites? Be one thing if we were engaging in corrupt fucking dogmatic bullshit and furtherance of the, security of the human race, I guess. I feel like Putin is kind of like Hitler, in which appeasement won't stop him, so yeah, force may be necessary. That's kind of how I feel, Ghetto Jesus. It seems to me, like, here's what I'll say. I don't think the Americans and Ukrainians have genuinely gone as far as they needed to with diplomacy options and shit, but I also kind of agree with the idea that Putin doesn't seem like he's going to be satisfied, right? So that's why I think it just needs to be made fucking obvious and clear, right? Those negotiations need to happen, and then if in the middle of those negotiations it just becomes clear that Putin is a completely fucking bitter piece of shit, Yeah, I don't know why that's happening, Matt. Yeah, that's very weird. Sis, that would end the world? I don't think it would. Do you support black people? Of course. Yes, I consider myself a black liberation activist. I don't know how effective I am in that pursuit, but I do consider myself aligned with the interests of black liberation. Where'd you get your glasses from? They are cute. These glasses have been around since the Obama administration. I couldn't tell you. Is that a wig? No. What wig has an obvious hair split? Do you support whites? Whiteness isn't a real thing. Like, you can, I guess I support whites in the sense that I support humanity as a general concept, being able to, like, determine their own autonomy and direction and stuff like that. But insofar as, like, a specific group of whites, no, because whiteness is not a real concept. Like, the idea that Irish people and British people have something in common, like, beyond a few pieces of DNA with French people just because they're white is stupid as fuck. The idea that a Congolese person and a person from Cote d'Ivoire are going to have anything in common necessarily other than a continent and some DNA merely because they are both black is stupid as fuck. But the idea that two black Americans might have something in common because they are both black is not stupid as fuck. It's actually something that is pretty easily demonstrated and that makes historical sense if you understand the context of chattel slavery. I'm going to have to turn on subscribers only mode, so if you want to continue chatting, just hit the sub button and you should be able to continue. I'm going to do a slow mode too, not that bad of one. I'm just going to do like a 20 seconds, I think. There we go. Hi Phoebe, watching from Great Britain. Hope you have a good day. It's gone 7 a.m. here. Yeah, of course. Do you say the N-word? Not unless I'm rapping. Or like, in general, I try not to say it even in an academic context at this point because it just like upsets people. But I will say that I think it's like, kind of, like, wouldn't it be better and more effective to illustrate the hatefulness of these words when used by white people to condemn black people and to be racist towards them? I just wonder if it wouldn't be more effective to use the word when you're describing how it's been used in a book or used in historical context. But, you know, if I'm rapping a Tupac song, I'm not gonna like say playa. What is your favorite song? Very hard. I don't know. Maybe my favorite song in the world might be I Know the End by Phoebe Bridgers. Honestly, that is one of those songs that is just, it's evergreen for me. But I think that's one of the reasons for that is because I don't listen to it multiple times. Like, I never listen to it, twice in a row. And I don't usually listen to it more than once in any given session, because it's just got this feeling of a song. You know how there are certain songs, like a bunch of rap songs are like this. There are rap songs that I will listen to and I'm just like, damn, that's good. I need more. And I want to reverse it. But then there's other songs, some rap songs, some rock songs, all kinds of songs. And I Know the End is an example of one that kind of has like a crescendo to it that makes it feel as though it's like an event in itself. I don't know how to put it, but it feels weird to re-listen to it a bunch of times, and I guess that's one of the reasons why it probably remains as one of my favorites. But then again, there are some other songs like that that are also evergreen to me. Like I Ain't by Tupac, or not Tupac, Tech Nine is an example of that. It's another evergreen song. I'll listen to it a bunch of times in a row, and then kind of get sick of it and move on. And then, a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, I'm back at it again. So I don't know. it'd be very hard for me to, like, land on one. Somewhere Only We Know. That was one of my ex's favorite songs. Are you a millennial? I was born in the late 90s, so kind of, but kind of not. What is your favorite food? Pizza, probably. Because it's so universal. There's so many different things that are pizza. Oh, basically any meal you want to have can be delivered to you in pizza form. As a millennial, then that's cool. Yeah, I'm a millennial. Yeah, part of the weirdest cadre of generations, in my opinion. People, born too late to understand the full context of life before 9/11, but born too early to not have any reference to it at all. Born too young to grow up with, like, smart devices from the beginning and, hardcore publicly accessible coding and the democratization of technology, but, born too late for that, but born early enough to enjoy the, like, first waves of tech that would eventually become that kind of thing and understand the frameworks behind it, maybe. It's weird, right? The sorts of, like, cultural things that people my age got exposed to, because a lot of us had older siblings, and if you were born in the late 90s, your older siblings, depending on how much older than you they were, like my oldest sibling was born in 1981, I think, and my youngest older sibling, I think, was born in 1989. So depending on how big the gap is between your parents' kids, you could end up with older siblings that were a lot older than you, that were watching different things and that kept watching different things as they grew up. And another weird thing about generations and decades and the way we try to characterize them is that there's bleed over, and a lot of people don't account for the bleed over, right? But there really is. There's bleed over. The 80s bled into the 90s and left their mark on culture forever, because people will still do stuff from the 80s, just like the 60s and 70s, etc. But the 90s kind of blended into the early 2000s, and it blended a lot longer than a lot of decades do. For a lot of people, the early 2000s just felt like an extension of the 90s. And for other people, it was radically different. It was a completely different atmosphere. Damn, why is my phone so heavy? Probably because you got weak arms. I remember the 90s. They were less weird than now, but more weird than now. Yeah, I can see that. Like, it probably seemed more weird at the time, but looking back on it now, you're like, damn, that wasn't actually that weird at all. The 90s were too awkward to be cool, but too genuine to be uncool. Yeah. That's what created grunge. No. It's more like grunge created that atmosphere. Yeah, it's weird how the different cultural influences work together to create people's apprehensions of it. Because I look back at the 90s, and I think a lot of people do, it's like, oh man, that was such a cool generation. Even though I didn't really get to grow up in it, I had older siblings that did and enjoyed the 90s and shit, and obviously there's tons of media that's, like, super culturally relevant that was produced during the 90s, so a lot of people just absorb a lot of that culture by osmosis. Are those grape white owls? They are. They are indeed. Yes. Yes, they are white grape white owls. CIA created feminism, which is insane when you read about it. The CIA did not create feminism. Feminism has been around a lot longer than the fucking CIA has. Now, what you might possibly be thinking of is the fact that the CIA did pour money and resources, just like the FBI, into a number of different domestic organizations, some of which were terrorist organizations, some of which were just innocuous activist organizations, but a lot of it was done to create kind of a cultural pushback or a sense of a greater supported cultural pushback or more visible cultural pushback against the ideals of the Soviet Union. And some of it was, and so like, one of the things that America has always wanted to do is maintain this image, and I guess we don't really want to do it anymore, but one of the things America wanted to do for a really long time after World War II was paint itself as the freest country on earth, right? The place where, the one place that came out of World War II with no marks of fascism, right? That was our big point of pride for a really long time in the post-war environment. This idea that fascism didn't touch America, that we had abundant freedom of speech, that there are leftists here, there are hard right-wingers here, there are racists here, there are non-racists here. Look at us go. And the CIA and FBI did pour money and resources as well as spying on all of these different organizations of all different fucking political leanings and all sorts of different agendas and shit, with the reason being to show the rest of the world, or to make it seem and appear to the rest of the world as if there is this widespread and constant ongoing hardcore discourse that is super publicly visible. In reality, there's always public discourse going on. There's always people arguing about stuff. America is pretty fucking progressive, but America didn't want to push like, oh, we're like progressive socialists, because that would make them seem too similar to the Soviet Union. What they wanted to push is, we're hardcore capitalists and conservative more than anything, but we allow leftists and liberals to make their case, god damn it, you know? And that was a big reason behind why they did stuff like that. But at the same time they were doing that, they were engaging in programs like COINTELPRO and FEMINTELPRO and shit, where they were literally embedding themselves in these organizations from a local level all the way on up to a fucking CIA and FBI level, to spy on them and to undermine them. Literally to undermine democracy at the expense of the American people, to project a certain political image worldwide. Phoebe, check Discord? Okay. Okay. Sam Neill, Jurassic Park actor, dies age 78. Yeah, alright. I have actually not watched the Jurassic Park movies, so I don't know much about it, but we'll see here. We'll see what we can do. We'll read. So, the actor Sam Neill, known for his roles in the Jurassic Park films, has died, aged 78. His family says the loss was sudden and unexpected, adding he died in Sydney, surrounded by family, and passed with the dignity that has characterized his whole life. Neill was born in Northern Ireland and moved to New Zealand as a child. He played Dr. Alan Grant in the first Jurassic Park in 1993, and in later films in the franchise. Okay. In 2023, Neill disclosed that he'd been diagnosed with cancer, but in April of this year, he revealed that he was cancer-free. Just goes to show you, sometimes you can get rid of all the cancer, but it can still have done enough damage. So yeah. Death was sudden and unexpected. A statement from Neill's family says it is with immense sadness that the Whanau of Sam Neill, extended family of Sam Neill, shared the news of his passing on Monday, 13th July, in Sydney, Australia. Sam was surrounded by family and passed with the dignity that has characterized his whole life. The loss was sudden and unexpected, but blessed by the fact that Sam remained cancer-free. Blessed? What? Okay, well, I guess the family's statement doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but okay. They would like to express their deepest gratitude to the staff of St. Vincent's Private Hospital for their incredible care. More details will be shared later, but for now, on behalf of the family, we ask that you respect their privacy as they navigate this immeasurable loss. I always wonder what respect their privacy means in that context. Does it just mean, like, be nice to them and don't be, like, stalking them and calling them and shit and trying to get in like, is that all it means? Or is it, like, do they not want people to even talk about it? I would imagine that's not what they want, right? Is because, like, it's a celebrity. You can't help it. People are going to talk about them. Naturally, people are going to want to talk about them. How do people not know who Sam Neill is? Well, like I said, I never watched the fucking Jurassic Park movies. To try and prevent media harassment, that's kind of what I was figuring. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. They don't want a bunch of media people that might have connections to the family or might be able to get their agents to get in contact with them or something, battening down their fucking doors and battering their windows in and be like, give us interviews! Calling them at all hours of the day. Are you old or something, Matt? Matt is pretty old, yeah. Matt's like 104 or something. There are CIA docs for Gloria Steinman being an agent. Recorded docs say she promoted feminism with gold to double tax the home, study the nuclear fam, etc. Okay, so... Like, I don't know. What is your point? I already talked about how the CIA literally embedded themselves in a ton of these organizations to specifically get them to pursue goals that would be more aligned with the state, or to get them to demonstrate in ways that would be more visible, or to get them to do things that would benefit America's position or some politician's position. Like, I don't know, dude. What you're telling me is the CIA has manipulated domestic advocacy groups. Yes, I know. The CIA is well known for infiltrating domestic advocacy groups. That doesn't mean that every domestic advocacy group is fucking formed by the CIA. Did you get your wig from the CIA? You must be a person who deals with male pattern baldness. I can't relate. See? Notice how I don't have a big bald spot? Notice how I've just got like the natural kind of hair part? Yeah. Sucks. Did you start going gray at 15 or something? You like all insecure about it? You look like a Bertha or Martha? I'll give you that. Although I think Phoebe is enough of a grandma-like name to go on. You can relate with being a male though, for sure? No, I can't. I always feel like an alien in a group of men. I literally feel like a space alien when I'm around men. Even men that are like somewhat reasonable and funny, I just end up feeling like a little bit of a space alien. Like, interesting. Strange thought patterns from these earthlings. Meanwhile, I get around a group of women and I'm like, oh yes, I understand. I get it. Phoebe, what is your general stance on taxes? This is an old question, but it's from Paradox. What is my stance on taxes? Taxes are a necessary evil to make sure that society keeps going until we figure out a way to structure society such that wealth does not need to be redistributed, and that, I think we could eventually build a society where things are structured such that labor is already collectivized to a high degree, where currency is basically unnecessary, and where it's no longer super important to log the hours, even, that someone puts towards doing something that is productive or whatever, right? I think that we can eventually get to a point where we've got a society like that, but I think that until we figure that out, until we evolve to that point, we are going to have a tax system so that people who manipulate whatever system is in place that does use currency, right now it's capitalism, hopefully in the future it will transition to a market socialist system, you have to have taxes to be able to take wealth and resources from those who hoard them and distribute it to the people who actually need them. No, telling you human rights were violated by CIA and feminism, just like counterculture, Woodstock, psychedelic movement, was also 100% backed with proof by CIA. Literally all lies. Okay, so feminism, once again, is far older than the fucking CIA. Counterculture movement, older than the CIA. How old do you think the fucking CIA is, bruh? How old is the CIA? The CIA is
Intelligence Agency, or CIA, is 78 years old, established in 1947. If you meant the Culinary Institute of America, that is 80 years old.
No, I meant the fucking CIA. I meant... Oh my god. Why would you think I meant the Culinary Institute of America? So 1947, okay? Now, let's just see here. How old is the American feminism movement?
The American feminist movement is 178 years old, starting with the Seneca Falls Convention.
So literally, unironically, 100 years older than the CIA. So it traced its organized roots back to the July 1848 Seneca Falls Convention in New York, where Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott issued the Declaration of Sentiments. Historians generally categorize the movement into 4 major waves, each with specific timelines and localized achievements. The first wave was focused on basic civil rights, culminating in the ratification of the 19th Amendment in August 1920, so once again a full 27 years before the invention of the CIA, which guaranteed women's right to vote. The second wave, from the 1960s to the 1980s, centered on workplace equality, reproductive rights, and systemic discrimination. Major achievements including the Equal Pay Act in 1963 and Title IX in 1972. The third wave arose to address perceived failures of the second wave, focusing on intersectionality, embracing diverse identities, and challenging restrictive gender norms. So that would be 90s to 2000s, 2010s. And then you got fourth wave, which is 2010s to present, defined largely by digital activism addressing issues like sexual harassment and systemic inequality. But I would argue that a lot of the attitudes and energies from the second and first wave are coming back, because a lot of the advocacy that they were opposing back then is also coming back. Like, there are tons of Republican politicians that want to take women back to, like, Handmaid's Tale times. You realize the CIA is an inherited on record org? Huh? Inherited on record organization. You're going to have to explain what that means, because this just sounds like conspiracy theory garbage to me. Kel is cooked, yeah. They're trying to defend their point now by arguing that the CIA is actually way older than the modern CIA because it inherited all this stuff from earlier movements. But that's not the argument you made in the first place. The argument you made was that the CIA influenced the feminist movement at some point in the 1960s. Well, actually, the initial claim you made was that the CIA invented feminism, and you then went on to modify that claim to suggest that the CIA merely influenced feminism at some vague point in the 60s. You justified that by claiming that there's some document somewhere that says that they, embedded themselves in a feminist organization to try and double tax the home, which to me doesn't make any fucking sense when you consider the fact that women had been fighting for their right to fucking work for equal pay for over 100 years before that. Phoebe Taylor's picking on me. Yeah, she does that sometimes. White feminism is 100% backed by CIA, but genuine intersectional feminism is not. I think that's kind of the point I've been making, right? Like I have said, how many more times do I need to say it in this stream? Yes, the CIA has embedded itself in all kinds of domestic advocacy organizations on both the right and the left, okay? But that does not mean that every domestic advocacy group or every fucking position of advocacy is therefore informed by the CIA. The CIA not as scary as it used to be. Well, I don't think they really need to be. Back in the day when the CIA was engaging in like COINTELPRO and shit, they were actually facing a united people that had seen the efficacy of leftist and progressive ideals brought to a federal level. They had seen, like, you got to remember. The counterculture movement happened in the wake of a very long tenure in Louisiana by Huey Long. It came in the wake of a very long fight for civil rights that had been going on for black people since the 1940s and before, frankly, but it had been really picking up since the 40s and 50s. It came on the heels of all of these big cultural changes where people were seeing the effectiveness of intersectional forms of progressive activism. And it was like, it was seen as like an issue of like capital protection. Like, we have to protect the capital in this country, not the capital city, but the capital class, the owners. We have to protect the bourgeoisie in this country because America is like supposed to be like the capitalist fucking dream world for all the world's richest people, right? So that was there. God, I hate that screaming. Ugh, I hate trains. Anyway, that was their goal, was the protection of state interest and the protection of private capital. And they actually had a strong incentive from that awful standpoint to try and influence these organizations and to push them in specific directions. Nowadays, people are a lot more divided. A lot of the politicians and media conglomerates have started doing the kind of thing that the CIA used to do, but they're doing it in a more direct way that people are able to latch onto a lot more easily. So the CIA doesn't really need to engage in the same level of intervention as they felt like they used to. What's the story behind Fulcrum plus bayonets? Oh, I used to have a little solo project that I wanted to add more people to, and I was calling it Fulcrum and the Bayonets. And when I made my Cash App, when I last changed my cash tag, it was during that time, and I was still really interested in doing music professionally and stuff. And now I can't change my cash tag. I think I can, but I've got to like get in contact with support and shit, and it's just too many steps. Google, y'all. Okay, because your standard is Google it, y'all. Let's just ask. Hey Google. Was feminism invented by the CIA?
No, feminism wasn't created by the CIA. It actually emerged from grassroots movements in the 19th and early 20th centuries, focusing on women's rights, including voting, fair labor, and property rights.
The rumor likely stems from the fact that prominent feminist and journalist Gloria Steinem worked for the Independent Research Service, a CIA-funded group, in the late 1950s. While Steinem used this background to attend international youth festivals and counter-Soviet messaging, Her later organizing in the 1960s and 70s women's liberation movement was entirely independent. Conspiracy theories connecting feminism to the CIA frequently emerge from the much broader cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. However, historical evidence and intelligence records show that the US government and the intelligence apparatus did not create the movement. Literally. So literally, I'm going to read this again because you're apparently retarded and only hear what you want to hear. No, feminism was not invented by the CIA. The history of feminism spans back to the 19th and earliest 20th century, rooted in grassroots movements advocating for women's right to vote, labor laws, and property rights. The rumor likely stems from the fact that prominent feminist and journalist Gloria Steinem worked for the Independent Research Service, a CIA-funded group, in the 50s, while Steinem used this background to attend international youth festivals and counter-Soviet messaging. Her later organizing in the 1960s and 70s women's liberation movement was entirely independent. Conspiracy theories connecting feminism to the CIA frequently emerge from the much broader cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. However, historical evidence and intelligence records show that the US government and the intelligence apparatus did not create the movement. Dude, I hate conspiracy theorists because literally all they got is just Google it, bro. But what they don't realize is that in these days, if you just Google it, Google's actually gonna fucking try and give you a decent approximation of the fucking truth as near as it can fucking tell you. If you want to find the weird conspiracy angle you're fucking talking about, you've got to go down a very specific rabbit hole, and you've got to shut off most of your brain in order to believe it. Google it. Well, Google is owned by Larry Ellison. Well, I just say Google it then. Kels, it's easy. Just say, I was wrong. I've got a fucking misinformed opinion on this, and I'm sorry. Hi, Mark. Most people don't end up Googling it. Yeah, that's the fucking thing. The whole idea behind just Google it, bro, and the reason why it's so important to call it out, and sometimes even just to do it to show people how wrong they are, is because it's meant to be a thought-terminating cliche. It's meant to have you stop considering it as a fact claim and start considering it as, well, maybe who knows? Maybe they are right. You're no longer supposed to look at it with critical thinking. That's what the phrase, just Google it, bro, is meant to do. Okay, yeah, Kel, I'm not engaging with you anymore. I do not engage with anti-Semites. I simply do not. Sorry. I don't engage with retards that think the Jews did everything bad in the world. So you can fuck off. I got too many Jewish friends. I got too many Jewish friends who hate Israel and oppose genocide. Retracting my like due to the R slur. Okay, that's fine. I understand. Not everybody likes it. Now, under the rules of Woke 1, I'm allowed to say it. Just saying. Being autistic, and I've got the paperwork to prove it. I'm not self-diagnosed. I got papers. So, being someone who was called a retard because of my IEP, I feel like I'm allowed to say it, but, you know. Kel got you smoking? So? Yes, I smoke. Yes, it's a bad idea. Yes, I should quit. Well, at least the tobacco. Cannabis, I mean, all smoke is a carcinogen to some degree, but cannabis smoke is less dangerous than tobacco smoke. Unsubscribing due to using neurodivergence as an excuse to use slurs? Okay. I don't give a shit. I do not care about your language policing bullshit. This is a come as you are place. If you are not in the place where you can deal with bad words, maybe you shouldn't be here. I genuinely don't understand why retard is so offensive to people. Because they have a mind virus. Because they have been told to find it offensive, and they haven't critically thought about it, and they refuse to critically think about it, because they've staked some part of their personality on the idea that it's intrinsically wrong. But literally every one of the arguments that would be used to demonize someone for using the word retard could be used against someone for using the word stupid, or the word moron, or the word imbecile, or the word idiot, all of which were clinical terms at the beginning of their use. And it's actually something you can look into. Unironically, it's literally it's an effect. I forget what it's called. But, or maybe is it genericization? I forget what it's called, but there's this thing that happens where, basically a term used to describe people who are genuinely, mentally ill, broadly, in a way that, includes learning disabilities and stuff like that, gets used as a slur or as an insult, however you want to see it, and it becomes used so much that it starts to lose, number one, its weight as a clinical term, and then starts to lose its weight as an insult. And that, around the time when it starts to lose weight as a clinical term, is when they start looking for a new term to refer to people more broadly. And that's one of the reasons why, when terminology started to become more important, medical terminology started to become more important, there started to become more people trying to codify it throughout the 60s to now. That's why, like, a lot of the modern terms that are used to describe specific conditions, that's why it's so much more common to use specific terms for specific conditions rather than referring to people broadly as any one thing, because there is no one learning disability that disadvantages you the same exact way as every other one. Even individual people with the same fucking variety of a learning disability may have different levels of cognition, different levels of ability at different cognitive tasks, etc. That's the thing I don't get too. You are not going to find a more generous and well-informed person talking about autism and learning disabilities in the leftist YouTube space. You're simply not going to. You know why? Because I'm a diagnosed autistic who actually cares about her diagnosis and went through decades at this point worth of learning about it and researching other related disabilities and other related mental conditions and neurotypes and stuff. And at this point I can talk about it pretty fucking adeptly for hours and hours. And yet, there are still some people that want to be more concerned with my usage of the word retard than they are with my advocacy for people that are neuroatypical. Are you British? By genes, yes. Let's look at my 23andMe. Have I ever showed you guys my 23andMe? Do you guys want to see my 23andMe? Tell you what, if somebody super chats $10, we'll take a look at the 23andMe. Or Cash App's $10, either way. I'll be honest, I don't care about your usage of the word, however distasteful I find it, it's whatever. That's how I feel like a lot of people feel about it, and I feel like that's a completely rational reaction to have. There's lots of things that people say that I find distasteful. You know, like ever so often, Paul Ziegel will use the term mongoloid. And while I do find it a funny term, I also think it's kind of a racist term, and I can't help but, you know, think of that anytime I hear it. So I try not to use it. I'm watching you give them hell, Phoebe. Thank you, Mark. Mark's been a really long-running fan. You know, it's kind of cool to me how many of my fans are from Mississippi. Like, from the same state as I am. That's kind of fucking cool. Dude, I forgot to tell you guys about this. I totally forgot to tell you guys about this. The other day, I was at a gas station somewhere, and I was recognized in public for the first time. I was gassing up my mom's car on a road trip, and I'd just gotten back out, and I was like getting ready to get in or do the fill up. I don't remember what part of the fucking process I was in, but this person like kind of like rolls down their window and waves at me, and they were like, I feel like, do you stream on YouTube? And I was like, yeah, I do actually. And you know, anyway, it ended up being a pretty cool interaction. They were like, oh yeah, I'm subscribed to your channel and everything. That's cool. No way. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even fucking joking. I didn't want to tell you guys about it right when it happened, because I don't know, I guess I wanted to sit on it for a while, but I was just thinking about it sitting here. That's neat. I know. Isn't that cool? Big first for me. Holy shit. Gotta refill the pipe. Once it starts tasting like that, it's no good. Do you crave the attention, Phoebe? Like, would you like it if it happened every day? No. I would not like it if I was getting recognized every single day, I don't think. I like some attention, but I don't think I would like massive amounts of it. Like, all the time. But I do like, I think I'm an ambivert when it comes to that kind of thing, because I do very much like, obviously I must like getting attention to some degree, or I wouldn't have a YouTube channel. And I probably wouldn't be as comfortable doing it for as long as I have, as much as I have. But I think it does have a limit. Like, even at the Deep Fat Fried meetup, after that was all over and everything, I didn't have like a crash or anything. It's not like I was just like, but I was definitely very exhausted. And when I got back home, I was definitely happy to be by myself for a few days. And I got tons of attention there. Tons of people recognized me at that. I was not expecting that at all. People fucking loved me at the Deep Fat Fried meetup, though. You know, I never really miss my old self, but sometimes I do miss the wonder of childhood. Any of you guys relate on that? Not even the wonder of childhood, really. Because I really don't miss the wonder of childhood, because complemented by the wonder of childhood is, of course, the fear and anxiety of childhood. So I guess it's maybe a little bit different, but like when I was a teenager, for example, why does my fucking gimbal keep doing that? Anyway, I really, I guess, mean the teenage years. By the time you get up to your teenager, like years where you're able to understand the dangers that society poses, and you're able to keep yourself safe, more or less, and you basically, like, you understand the very basics of society. You don't understand much, but you've got the basics down. And you're in that stage where you're exploring and figuring out the more complicated stuff. That is an era of my life that I sometimes wish I could get back some of that same wonder. Because I'll be honest with you guys, it's kind of rare these days for me to be listening to a song in the car and to get super emotional. By kind of rare, I mean it happens once, every couple of months. Whereas I feel like during that period of my time, it was not uncommon for me to cry multiple times a week at songs I was hearing in the car, or to feel this just massive, sublime sense of wonder and impressedness at like the size of the world and the complexity of human relationships and stuff like that. And I guess sometimes I just wish that I had some way to re-experience some of those things. I miss being a dumbass from 18 to 25. Yeah, I think everybody does. And I think it's one of those weird things, we don't talk about it much, right? Like, you're kind of made fun of for talking about it, really. But I think it, honestly, in my opinion, makes a lot more sense than reminiscing or, fantasizing or whatever about your teenage years or your childhood years. Because, like, you ultimately had a lot of the same rights and privileges between 18 and 25 that you do as a fully grown adult, 25 and up. And so I feel like the lessons are maybe a little bit more translatable to your real life. And it's also an era that there's a lot of like complicated adult experiences that happen during that time that really inform people's life and shit. And we just don't talk about it much as a culture, how like that period of time, by the time like when you start being able to drive on your own any time of day, and you start being able to work a job, like most jobs, by yourself without having to have special accommodations and stuff like that, you become like the fully fledged adult that you wanted to be for the last 3 years for the first time. But then you have to spend like the next 7 years figuring out how to actually navigate the adult environment. And you still want to have fun and party and have a good time like you were, or like whatever, right? If you didn't get to have that life, you might want that life now. And if you did get to experience a ton of that life, then you might be thinking, well, I really need to buckle down, but you might be still involved in it. And so it's hard to, I guess, encapsulate all the different experiences that can happen during that time. But I think it would serve us well as a people if we talked about it more. Thank you, King Bugs, for the $10. I appreciate that. I miss having a job. Unemployed for a few years. I've just been watching my 20s slip away. That's not a good position to be in. Unless you've got some kind of income that's like making that okay. But even at that, if it's like a trust or something, that's finite. So I would definitely be trying to, like, if I was in that position, and I've been in that position before, I guess, for brief times, anytime I don't have an income stream, like, guaranteed that I know about, like, that's my biggest fucking impulse, is making that happen again. It's like when I was living on the road, and I had 2 guitar strings and one of the guitar, tuning pegs break in one day. Immediately, all my plans to travel more that month and stuff like that went by the wayside, because I knew I needed to save up my money to buy another fucking guitar. And, that's what I ended up doing. But it can be really fucking difficult, honestly. You know what's a problem nobody talks about in America, or very few people do? There are employment deserts in this country, not just in the cities, but widely in the rural areas. So if you are a person without a car, and you don't have a family member that lives with you that has a car, like, let's say you live on your own, and there are people who live in situations like this where they live on their own, or they live with parents or something, but there's only one vehicle between the 3 of the people living in the house, or they don't have a vehicle at all, and everybody's just kind of got to rely on rides. There's no taxi service, there's no buses, there's no trains, there's literally no public transit, pretty much outside of the cities, there's nothing. And, like, if you end up being a person who comes of age in an environment like that, it is not very hard for your life to end up in a position where you just don't have any way really to escape that. Besides being homeless for a while, I guess. And I guess if you just wanted to pack up all your stuff and start walking, maybe that's an option, but it's not exactly a good option. And it definitely rings of the 1920s and, like the 30s and 40s, the Great Depression era and shit. You look cute today, thank you. Baby, I have to go, I subbed. I'll try to be back next stream. Thank you for teaching me stuff tonight. Of course. Thank you, Aussie Wee Wee. What a weird name, by the way. Why the U.S. make war all around the planet? To protect billionaire interests, mainly. The United States has predicated its economy for about the last 50 to 60 years on the military-industrial complex, and as a result of that, it's become very difficult for the proposition of actual, complete Pax Americana to actually become a thing again, right? The idea of America, like, withdrawing from conflicts and not supporting global conflicts, or using its strength merely as a diplomatic tool, that idea has completely fled the coop. Just completely. It's flown the coop. It's gone. Nobody's got that in mind anymore. Instead, the main driver seems to be how much wealth can we extract from the lower classes of both America and the rest of the world, and what are the best ways we can do that? And one of the best ways that they figured out they can do that is through endless war. If it's not Ukraine, it'll be Iran. If it's not Ukraine or Iran, it'll be Afghanistan. If it's not Ukraine, Iran, or Afghanistan, it'll be some country in Southeast Asia. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it'll be Vietnam, maybe it'll be North Korea, maybe it'll be China, who knows, right? But we've got to have a war on. We've got to have a war on. We've got to have like the amount of money that we spend every year. This is one of the reasons why leftists and progressives advocate so strongly for reducing the military budget, because the amount of money that we spend on military defense every year abhors a vacuum. It does not want to just sit there idly. It needs there to be a war. It needs that stuff to be spent, right? It needs that stuff to be spent up and used because it has to be replaced, and that replacement feeds into the MIC. Our economic system is evil? Yeah, fundamentally. Fundamentally, the prioritization of profit over people will always lead to evil outcomes. That's the reason why I hate all of you. You didn't give a reason, so I don't really know what to do with that. Thank you, King Bugs, for the $10. I did tell you guys I would show you my 23andMe if you guys, if you guys donated enough. So let's look at it. If you've ever been wondering what mongrel mix of piece of shit I am, let's figure it out. So we got Philadelphia. So there's quite a bit on this list. I'll be able to show you more. I'll go through it. So we've got European, 99.3%. We got British and Irish, 92.1%. Let's go into British and Irish. Let's go into the British and Irish. Let's go. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a little look at it. Let's see here. Alrighty, so as far as country matches, I got 75.4% English. We got Greater London, Lincolnshire, Merseyside, Tyne and Wear, Leicestershire, County Durham, Cumbria, Suffolk, South Yorkshire, West Midlands. Alright. Cool. Then we got Scottish, Northern and Central Scotland. Interesting. Commonly reported recent ancestor locations in this genetic group are Orkney, Fife, Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeenshire, Nahalana, and okay, I don't know how to pronounce that, never mind. Shetland, High Council, Moray, and Stirling. Alright, cool. Let's see what else here. Oh, got United Kingdom in Scotland, which has Glasgow City, Dumfries and Galloway, Dundee City, Falkirk, Orkney, Edinburgh, Fife, Renfrewshire, Inverclyde, and North Lanarkshire. I'm not sure how that's pronounced either. Man, we got some weird pronunciations over there. Holy shit. Man, I'm glad my ancestors left this blighted fucking island. At least our place names are pronounceable. And then 0.5% Welsh. Western European is 3.8%. We got Belgian, Rhinelander, and Southern Dutch. Let's see. It doesn't give me any more than that. So Belgian, Rhinelander, and Southern Dutch. We got Austrian and Southern German, which is 0.4%. And it doesn't give me any more detail than that. And then we got Italian and Maltese, 2.3%. I wouldn't be expecting that, and it was kind of a recent update, but Northern Italian, 1.2%, and Southern Italian, 1.1%. So, I don't know, I guess at one point in the ancient history of my lineage, I had like one Italian grandparent, like great-grandparent from either side, maybe? I don't know. Or from like either end of the country, I should say. It's interesting to think about, that's for sure. Then we got Nordic. Let's see here, 1.1% Nordic. Ooh, and it says I might have some ancestry in Iceland here, maybe. That'd be cool. No, Swedish and Finnish. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, Swedish 0.9%, Finnish 0.2%. Okay, I'll take that. That sounds pretty reasonable. I would expect as much. And then here was the part where it got really weird for me. trace ancestry. So we got 0.7% trace ancestry. Angolan and Congolese, 0.4%, so about 0.5%. Definitely unexpected. There are like stories in my family of us having a black ancestor, but I never fucking believed them. And then Iranian, Caucasian, and Mesopotamian, 0.3%, so about 1/3%. So yeah, I am an eclectic mix of races, ethnicities, regions, and areas, and that's one of the many reasons why I don't identify with the label white. Am I a white person? Obviously I am. Do I consider myself like a representative of whiteness or a part of whiteness as a concept or anything like that? No. Nor do I want to be, nor do I think that such a concept exists. Unless you're specifically talking about people in a shorthand sense to refer to their, if you're using like the concept insofar as it has been used to oppress people, I think that there's a justified usage of it as a real term then. Or if you're talking about like a person is like you're describing their skin tone, then I think that makes sense, right? But when white supremacists go around and act like Irish people and French people should be united purely on the basis of their color of skin, that is a fundamentally flawed, bogus argument. But if you want to talk about whiteness insofar as like a system of oppression that was codified by racist white people to make it easier for them to oppress black and brown people, then yes, it's real in that sense. But it's not real in the sense that it, like that they are actually right and that they were describing something that is real or should be fucking codified. Does that make sense? It's amazing being white? No, it's kind of dog shit. White people have the worst cookouts, the worst parties, the most boring funerals, the most boring weddings, the most boring graduations. Name me some examples of traditional white food, and then I'll bowl you over with the fucking delicious, fantastic, sublime beauty of soul food, which is a black creation. Mostly. Being a white person would be kind of suck. I'm telling you, as a whitey, you know, like, no, it's not universally true. Like, no rule is universally true, like, when it comes to sociology and human behavior, right? My family was, like, we had some, well, one side of my family had some pretty exciting and eclectic family gatherings and shit, right? But then the other side of my family, whenever they did have family gatherings, it was so stuffy and like so many topics restricted, and there was no drinking or fucking, like, even the idea that we were doing it for recreation was kind of like a secondary afterthought. Whereas the other side of my family, admittedly, where I suspect that the ethnic ancestry that I have in my 23andMe may have came from, they had way more eclectic and interesting gatherings and way more interesting weddings and stuff like that. So I don't think it's like a universal rule, but if you just like take white people as an average, it's a boring fucking culture insofar as it's a culture that exists at all. And I don't think it is, right? I don't think whiteness is real in the sense that white supremacists are right when they say that French people and Irish people and fucking Irish American people all have something in common just because they're white, right? Obviously stupid. I feel like I'm going to have to reiterate this a lot as I talk about it, right? But people are not a monolith, and the only way in which whiteness is a real concept is if you are talking about the system of oppression that was codified by racist whites, mostly plantation owners and their fucking servants and acolytes in white neighborhoods and shit. Like, that is a real idea, because that was actually used to oppress people, but it's not real in the sense that it represents an actual sociological truth. My family were mixed sharecroppers from Appalachia. Based on my ancestry, it seems very, very likely that that's the same case for my family. We know for a fact, based on some records in my family and shit, that my dad's branch of the family migrated to the area of Mississippi that they live in and live around and shit, from Georgia, from North Georgia specifically. So from the Appalachians. And we also know that they were sharecroppers because that was what they did the entire time until somebody in my family in the 1940s bought, well, at the time it was quite a bit of land, but it slowly got subdivided until now there's only like, I don't know, 3 acres left distributed amongst like 4 or 5 different members of the family that still have a retained interest in the property. You know, it got subdivided quite a bit. Luckily, it hasn't gone under development or anything like that. But and thankfully, we've still got a little bit left, right? Thankfully for that, you know, thank goodness for that. But before that, my family had sharecropped. You know, like my great grandfather remembered a time before they had land that they owned, where they could own the bulk of their profits, and he remembered living on basically somebody else's land that they had a big chunk out of. I say big for them, small for the farmer, that they produced a bunch of stuff on, and, you know, a good chunk of it went to that farmer to support his market runs, basically. So, as recently as the early 1900s, my family were Mississippi sharecroppers, and they had inherited that way of life from their North Georgia Appalachian sharecropper fucking ancestors. But I don't know what my mom's side of the family story is necessarily. I think that my mom's side of the family may actually go all the way back to the colonies. I've got a sneaking suspicion. I need to look into it more. I desperately want to look into it more. You know what I need to do? I need to befriend some old ladies. I already look like one of them. I just need to befriend some old ladies that will teach me how to research my own ancestry. Let's see here. It talks about how, while, yes, racism and whiteness is a social construct, the property of social construction does not mean that it does not create real, unequal, and oppressive circumstance. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I'm sorry if it didn't come off that way, then I apologize. But that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, is that when white supremacists act like there is some real concept of whiteness that actually binds people with white skin together in some real way, they are lying to you. They are constructing something. But that construct does have real oppressive consequences on the people who are affected by systems that are infected with that ideology. So it's real in the sense that it creates consequences for people, but not real in the sense that it should be perpetuated or that it would continue going on if it were not for the perpetuation of it by people with that mind virus. Does that make sense? No, you're good. I was talking about a book I recommended. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to look at what it was because I want to know the book. Let me read, because I want to know. A great book that talks about the concept is Eurocentrism and the Communist Movement. Okay, cool. All right, bet. Eurocentrism and the Communist Movement. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for the book recommendation. Eurocentrism and the Communist Movement. Eurocentrism. Hold on. I'll go to Amazon right now. I'll put that on my list. Oh, okay. By Robert Beale? Okay. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Add to lists. Alrighty, it's been added to my channel wish list. So let's see. Robert Beale's Eurocentrism in the Communist Movement traces the history of Eurocentric and anti-Eurocentric currents in the Marxist-Leninist tradition, arguing that this distortion was key to the development and spread of revisionism and ultimately to the failures of the communist project in the 20th century. A work of intellectual history, Eurocentrism in the Communist Movement explores the relationship between Eurocentrism, alienation, and racism, while tracing the different ideas about imperialism, colonialism, progress, and non-European peoples as they were grappled with by revolutionaries in both the colonized and colonizing nations. Teasing out racist errors and anti-racist insights within this history, Beale reveals a century-long struggle to assert the centrality of the most exploited within the struggle against capitalism. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, sounds like a good book. Why is Mrs. Goggins from Postman Pat talking to me about Marxist theory? I had to get a new job when that fell through. You understand. If you want to be a funny troll, mimic that style, okay? Now I gotta know what this person looks like. All right. Okay. All right. All right. All right. I'll take it. You guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. Don't even enable them, Phoebe. They aren't laughing with you. Well, they didn't misgender me. I thought it was funny. Hell, you could ask a lot worse from a troll. Like, you know, they referenced a femme movie character. You know, I make fun of myself for looking like an old lady sometimes. She does have little round wireframe glasses, just like I do. I don't know. I think they earned a giggle out of me. The way that I describe it is like an internal critique of ML ideology that focuses on dismantling some of the ideas like Eurocentric historicity. It's saying, wait, hold up, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, let's fill the tub up with something fresh. Yes, that sounds like exactly the kind of thing I've been wanting to get my hands on. It's funny that you're in here tonight, Buffalo, because I've actually been wanting to ask my audience for book recommendations specifically about the relationship between racism and the liberation of various ethnic groups and like racial minorities and oppressed in places where they're oppressed, and generalized like Marxist / anarchist theory, because I know that there's a big intersection there, and I don't want to be one of the many white leftists that never talks about it, right? They're American fascists from 4chan, don't enable them. Was that person specifically? I don't know. I think you might be, I think you might be, a little paranoid. Because this account that said that, it's the first message they've ever sent in here, and their account is 7 years old, or 10 years old, I think. So, I don't think that is one of the people that's like with the 4chan raid or whatever. Because they've got 0 deleted messages, 0 timeouts, 0 hides, joined 10 years ago. Oh, Lord, get out of here. I hate reading religious screeds in my chat. I really, really, really dislike reading religious screeds in my chat. Please don't post religious screeds in my chat. Please refrain. You're not gonna, like, win friends around here by posting religious screeds in my chat, okay? How to win friends and influence people. Step 1. Stop posting stupid religious garbage in their random live streams. You guys ever noticed how many self-help books are either guides on how to manipulate other people or how to be comfortable with being manipulated? Isn't that weird? I think, like, the best thing we can do is, like, have a deeper and more educated understanding of how all these different intersectional struggles hurt each respective group. Yes, no, I totally agree. That's why I don't call myself a class reductionist, even though I do think that a lot of the worst things on our planet are, like, a lot of things that are things we would deal with even in a non-capitalist society, I think are egged on and made worse by capitalism. But even with that understanding, I still don't call myself a class reductionist, because I understand that it is not necessarily capitalism which creates racism, right? Not necessarily. I would argue that, like, modern American racism is a product of capitalism, like a direct product of it, but, like, racism as a concept, I think, can evolve, you know, independently in a number of different social organizations. And sexism is another good example. The discrimination of people based on, like, sexual differences, orientation differences, all of these different things are things which can be generated independent of a capitalist system, but which I think are made infinitely and exponentially worse by capitalism, which is one of the reasons why my big push for advocacy is always, like, let's get a handle on these economic issues as best we can, right? Because that we can ally around that so easily, and that will make it a lot easier. Like, the more of those we tackle, the more easier it becomes to deal with social issues at the same time. My evidence for that is that some of the biggest achievements that were done by the civil rights movement happened in the wake of 20 years of economic fucking uprising and economic mobility and shit. Right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah, it's not satanic, it's a spirit board. Chill out. Yeah, we use the power of Satan to put litter boxes in schools. I'm the leftist Fox News told you to be terrified of. Sorry, I fucked that up. Let me try it again, okay? I'm the leftist Fox News told you to be terrified of. High school acting level. But still, you guys love me. A+, cringe. I'm like a master of cringe. I can do cringe like on command. But, you know, I can also be chill and charismatic. So it's like, why are your teeth so yellow? Do you smoke? Yes. My teeth really aren't that yellow. You're just used to seeing all these fucking celebrities and shit in movies with like little little chiclets in their mouth. I don't know. I don't have that. Phoebe cringe would kill me if it's too cringe. I'm not gonna do it to you, Matt. Don't worry. Jesus Christ died for your sins on the cross. Interesting. Interesting, Hyper. Can I buy your daughter? Interesting argument, Hyper. Given that you get your morality from the Bible, can I buy your daughter? Just wondering. If you attribute Jesus Christ to the source of your morality, can I buy your daughter? Two goats? All right. Matt set the price. I got 2 goats. Do you have a daughter for sale, Hyper? Okay, Epstein, I ain't the one who put fucking the literal codification of marriage slavery in the Bible. I guess you guys need a little lesson, huh? Tell me a little bit about marriage slavery in the Bible and the way a father may sell his daughter to a husband. In the Bible, the practice of a father selling his daughter primarily occurs in the context of extreme poverty and is highly regulated to serve as a form of protective contract, whatever. I just want the fucking... Yes, here we go. And if a man sells his daughter to be a female slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has betrothed her to himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt deceitfully with her. And if he has betrothed her to his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. If he takes another wife, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, and her marriage rights. And if he does not do these 3 for her, then she shall go out free, without paying money. So, according to Exodus chapter 21, verses 7 through 11, it's totally fine for a dad to sell his daughter into sexual slavery. Totally fine. It's totally fine. There's certain regulations on it. There's certain things you have to do. Like if you want to take multiple wives, interesting that the Bible says that there's specifically it's interesting that the Bible specifically codifies the idea of multiple wives. Yet when you hear fucking Christians talk about same-sex marriage, it's always one man, one woman. No, that's not biblical. It's actually one man, many women, his harem of fucking concubines. But that's leaving all that aside from the main point, which is that I made a good offer of 2 goats for Hyper's daughter, and he has not responded. So he is breaking biblical law. Exodus chapter 21 tells me that I've got a right to make an offer. So if we're going to base our morality off the Bible, we have to fucking work with that. I'm sorry. Or you can agree with me that a secular humanist morality would be a more fundamentally humanistic morality to live by, that it would be better for everyone involved, that it would afford more people more rights. If you want to agree with that and move off the idea that Jesus Christ and the Bible has anything to say about modern life and how we should live it, if you want to agree with me on that, then we can drop the whole Bible marriage thing. But unless you want to keep going, like if you want to keep going with this whole the Bible is the source of my morality garbage, you're going to have a hard time arguing with me. What grounds secular humanist morality such that your morality won't drift into something you'd find abhorrent in 300 years? Nothing, because abhorrent is a subjective term. There's lots of things that cultures 500 years ago would find abhorrent about how we live now. I don't really care that they would make that argument. I don't give a fuck. Nor do I think that people in 300 years necessarily need to be worrying holy fucking hard about what we were doing all the way back then, when we've got a completely different set of material conditions to worry about. I think that what secular humanism does best is afford people the right and enshrine in people's hearts the willingness and fucking desire to debate their morality, to discuss their morality, to make it fit with the material conditions, to make it make sense in the face of what they're facing. Cop-out, you're just unable to argue against it. Cop-out is the universal sign of, I've lost the argument, but I don't really know how to explain how, so I'm just going to say you had a cop-out. In 300 years, people will be fighting for clean water to survive. The Bible isn't going to be anyone's main concern. Yeah, nobody is going to be looking at the Bible for guidance in 300 years when the water is dried up in most parts of the fucking regularly accessible world, and where people are utterly reliant on what remaining desalination plants there are and what remaining cold water springs there might be, and they're moving further and further northward and accommodating the colder and colder environments just so that they can fucking stay alive and continue to drink fresh water? You think the Bible is going to be useful then? An agrarian document written to control the lives of Bronze Age shepherds who were primarily concerned with the goings-on of fig orchards and dates? You really want to tell me that that's going to be a useful fucking morality when climate change fucking starts taking this planet and raping it in the ass and burning it all up into a fucking little cinder? You want to tell me that this Bronze Age bullshit mythology, which primarily concerns itself with the affairs of tribal farmers, dates, figs, and fucking, I don't even know, wheat? You want to tell me that that's going to be a useful document to live your life by in an era where you are fighting in the fucking wilds of Canada just to survive, trying to hunt a moose communally to survive the winter? Motherfucker, your ideology isn't future-proof. What moral lesson will we be able to derive from Jesus and the donkey and the fig tree when nobody even eats from a fig tree anymore? Because the regions that used to grow figs are too hot to grow figs anymore. What is a document that primarily concerns itself with the affairs of Middle Eastern farmers? How useful is that going to be in an era where that lifestyle isn't even possible by the people who fucking lived most of their fucking existence doing it? Oh. I will be right back. I gotta run inside, grab me another drink, and use the bathroom. Yeah. I will be right back. Okay, alrighty. I am back. What's up, everybody? Thank you for being patient. I appreciate it. I heard some of you guys saying earlier I ulted. And if I understand the lingo of the kids correctly, I think that means, that's good. I think. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hold on. Let's get this over here. You left, then came back? Oh shit, now you don't understand the lingo? I'm gonna be lost. Well, I think I still have a general grasp of it. But no, we can keep talking about Christianity. It's just like, the only reason I went on that rant was because I just kept seeing Jesus spammers in the chat. And I was like, man, this is getting increasingly absurd in a less and less sensible world that needs more and more scientific answers. And it's getting to the point where there have always been people dying for religion, but at this point there are people dying for religion when we have way better answers on all the things that religion supposedly addresses. So it's just like needless death, needless degradation, needless harm. For what? To placate some people about death? No. That's not good enough. Yeah, no, that's valid. That's valid. Yeah. Well, the stream's probably going to get age gated, so, it is what it is. I feel better, though. I do. I genuinely do. I feel a lot better. I feel a lot better. And we might just end up ending this stream and going inside and doing an ARC stream anyway. I will tell you this much, it is time for me to turn members only mode on. Hi, kitty. Thank you, King Bugs, for the $10. I appreciate that. Did I come in wrong time? No, Joey, you're fine. You're fine. We might move like stream type here in a minute, just depending on how I feel. But no, you came in at a fine time. We were having a very heated religious argument, and well, I guess it wasn't even really a heated religious argument. I just saw some religious spam, and it got me pissed off, and so I, went on one of my atheist rants. And that time I was talking about how the Bible is going to become increasingly less useful in an era where less and less of its cultural references even make sense, Like, as climate change ramps up, as more and more people are forced out of the places where they've always lived, as less and less places are able to support the same kind of agriculture, it seems like there will eventually come a point, probably within the next 300 years, where the Bible is not even going to really be culturally translatable anymore. Where you're going to have so much more understanding and so much explanation that it's just going to become like sort of obvious that it is not a reliable document for like trying to determine how you should live your life in the modern day. You know I'm talking about the game, right, Matt? I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about Desi and Kyle. The religious spam in chat is, fuck. Dumb. Hold on one second. I gotta put my battery back on the phone and get my phone set back up. The religious spam in chat is dumb. It's almost done to be hostile. God fucking damn it. I hate that battery. Anyway, I swear, they gotta practice what they preach. I agree. I agree, Joey. I, for one, agree. Okay, there we go. Maybe. Okay. Fuck Ark. I still miss my deer slaughtered while I was at work. Rip Rocket the deer. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know what you mean, especially because once you build up a really good relationship with one of your tames, and you name it and everything, you start to make memories with it and shit, and then eventually you miscalculate when you're in the swamp, or you leave and you have to work too long on a certain day or something, you just come back and it's all gone. But that's one of the reasons why I play on ORP clusters. That way, when I'm not online, and a tribe member's not online, nothing can happen to the shit. See, I somewhat agree with you for some of the Bible, actually. Protestants can interpret however the fuck they want, so we'll twist the book around hardcore down the line. Exactly. I feel like because it's going to become, like, less... I think because it's going to become less culturally translatable in the future, there will be lots of people who try and twist it around and make it fit to their specific narrative about how things should be going. And it's just not going to be that useful a document by the time people start doing shit like that. And it's still going to be manipulated to that purpose unless people, you know... I want game streams from Phoebe. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. We'll do like 10, 15 more minutes of this. Maybe 20 more minutes of this. And then we'll go do some gaming streams. Sound good? Catholic Church is pretty big about everyone being on the same page, to avoid that specifically, to make sure it still applies to the ages. Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I guess I have a little bit more respect for the Catholic model of Christianity, in terms of at least just maintaining more internal consistency. Because, you know, like, they'll do ecumenical councils and shit to make sure everybody's on the same page and to figure out difficult questions whenever they come up. Phoebe likes to smoke more than she likes to game. It's a problem. She needs a room she can game and smoke. Well, that's the fucking hope. So one of the things that I want to do this year, if you guys donate enough, if I am able to diversify this channel's content offerings enough to increase revenue to a point where I can afford it by the end of this year, then by the end of this year, I want to have that exact setup. There is a different outbuilding we've got on this property, and it is actually already connected to electricity. It's connected with a big enough line that I could have quite a few different things in there drawing electricity, and it wouldn't be a big deal. And so my plan is to take that other outbuilding, because it's already outfitted with full electricity. See, the reason I don't do that in here is because I've got everything in here set up on a fucking extension cord with a couple extra plugs at the end, basically. So I've got, you know, I've got my lights and phone chargers and a box fan, right? but I can't run like a PC with the amount of power that I can get out here. I can't run, and not only that, but I wouldn't have any way to set it up. It's not weather controlled in here, and there's no way for me to set up that. But out there, I would be able to set up an air conditioner and everything, because I'd be able to insulate it fully and get it fixed up with a minimum of windows and places for like the air to drift out and escape. I'd be able to set it up to where I wouldn't have to share it or have it be eventually used for some future purpose, so I could be able to smoke weed in it just fine and not have to worry about like, oh, is this gonna like leave lingering smells or like little weed nuggets in the cracks and crevices if I have to use it for some other purpose that would be disadvantageous in the future. So hopefully, by the end of this year, I will have that exact setup. A place where I can record and stream, smoke, whether I'm streaming or not, and game. What do you do about smoking next to your PC? My friend gave me a graphics card one time and it was just covered in yellow nicotine from vaping. Like covered. I had to soak it in isopropyl. Well, that's one of the reasons why I don't smoke that often in my bedroom. I'll tell you that much. But there's really not much you can do about it except have some kind of system that is designed to catch the smoke and scrub it before it can get into your PC. And that's basically like my plan for when I get this set up. If I can get it set up the way I want it to be set up, I want it to basically be so that whenever I let out a puff of smoke, it is carried, like it never is even able to get near the PC. And it is carried away from me and like with the geometry of the room, and then goes through an air scrubber, which I've looked into it, and there are these mini split units that come with an air split or with an air scrubber built into them. And I think if I designed that right and I set that up right, I could make a system that would make it a lot less of an issue. I'm just sitting here thinking of other ways that I could deal with that same issue and make it even less of a problem. Like another thing I could do is basically make a more or less sealed box. Make a more or less sealed box and some kind of heat exchanger system. A box that has like a lid on it and everything. I could even make it look cool. It might even be a way to make it a more useful and functional space. But put like a seat on top of it and everything, but have it under some contained thing where no air from the room can get inside the PC or can even get to the area where the PC is at, and then have a heat exchanger running on the side of it or something that cools down the ambient air inside that little sequestering chamber and like incorporates the cooler air of the room, or I'm sorry, like, lets off the heat that it takes from that and incorporates that within the like cooler air of the room and shit. I don't know. There's a number of ways I feel like I could figure out a way around it. Just get one of those standing air purifiers, put it next to you so it sucks it in. That's an option too, for sure. Yeah. I saw you sent it on Discord. Let me see. Yeah. I've seen these before. Yeah, go liquid cooling setup then. I mean, that's probably what I would do in such a situation. I would just do an AI. Yeah, all of you guys got ideas, but I don't know. I think whenever I get to this point, I will just. I think the first thing I'm gonna do is get it set up how I want, and just get an air purifier and see how that works for a while. And then after like a month of doing it that way, I'll take the PC out, I'll clean it out, I'll judge the dust level, to see if it seems to be making a difference. And if it doesn't seem to be making enough of a difference, then I'll consider putting it in a normally sealed chamber that will segregate it from the more like polluted air of the room. And I will probably look into creating some kind of little heat exchanger on top of having an AIO set up. That way, you know, like the computer heats up the AIO cooler and everything, and that heats up the air, and then the heat exchanger takes that hotter air and cools it down by transferring that heat out to the room, which is being actively cooled by an air conditioner. I got plans, I got ideas. I was not expecting to be this hungry at this late at night. I might have to eat before I do that ARC stream, y'all. I hope my PC can handle playing ARC and streaming at the same time. I'm just gonna have to test it out. Of course, I'm gonna be streaming on StreamYard, so it should be pretty easy. Because as far as I know, StreamYard handles like the back-end shit on their side. I got one of these for cleaning dust. Let's see here. What is it? Oh, neat. That is cool. That is cool. It is a blower for dust. Yes, I see. That's very neat. Holy shit. One of my friends on Discord just sent me something that looks delicious. Sorry, I'm just like reading back. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. When we will can raid. Okay, that's fine. What is Maxwell Dino again? 150? My desire to answer everything is overtaking my ability to be logical. Okay, back to the stream. These streams get me through leg day. I'm glad. Mitch is in fact turtle enough for the Turtle Club, I guess. Yeah, so that's the other news of the day. We didn't talk about it during our 2-hour-long dissertation about news, religion, politics, and everything else, but Mitch McConnell is, well, actually we did talk about it a little bit, but we didn't talk about it much. Mitch McConnell is apparently alive. I don't know how much I can believe it, because the pictures do look strange, I'm not gonna lie. Almost looks like his wife is, like, puppeting him, almost, like, but I've got no proof of that. So as far as we know, Mitch McConnell is alive, which I guess is fine. Whatever, dude. It's just like, I know he's retiring next year anyway, and so the people of Kentucky will be able to choose some other Republican shitheel to help Trump get more fucked up shit done, and to help whatever the next Republican shitheel after him get shit done. I know, I get it, but still, man, I was really hoping they would have to do some kind of like special election or something. Of course, I think the actual thing that they would have had to do is, I think it's like in August they would have had to basically the outgoing senator's political party gets to pick 3 candidates that they want the governor to choose from. So damn, I am so fucking hungry. I don't even know what I'm gonna eat either, because it's so late. It is so late. Bitch, that's not me. Bitch, that is not me. That is a good meme, though. No, I wish I was the pink news lady, the fucking... I wish I was the code pink lady that helped push him down, or tripped him up, or whatever. I sent you evidence that you pushed Mitch. Okay, let me show you guys as Matt's evidence that I pushed Mitch McConnell. Okay? Who's that? We look nothing alike. Fun topic. What's a fair way to properly get up the proper number of Supreme Court justices? We're supposed to have the number of justices according to number of circuits, yet we have 913 right now. Huh, interesting. What is a fair way? Well, I think the fairest way would probably be to I think the fairest way would probably be to allow whatever the next Democratic president is to install at least one new Supreme Court justice. And then next time you get Republican in office, then another one, right? And you just slowly build it up. But I don't know if even that would be able to keep up with the... Like, what if in that time there's a 14th Circuit created? I don't know. The other thing is like, how much does fair matter in a world where people are getting more and more desperate just for a solution that works? Like, who's to say the fairest way, according to the political dichotomy we've got, would actually be the most humanitarian way to go about it? Like, maybe the interest that would be, or maybe the action that would be in the interest of the most people would be to, like, just install a bunch at once. I mean, if each circuit voted for their own department heads and the judges had the final say, then maybe that would be more democratic. Oh, that would definitely be more democratic, yeah. I don't think that Supreme Court justices should be appointed. I think that they should be elected officials. Because as much as people want to make the Supreme Court a non-political job, it is a political job. And people need to be, like, vetted by the people on the basis of their politics, in my opinion. Up to one expert presidential term until filled, regardless of party, would also stop situation like how Trump has gotten to appoint so many quickly. I think that might be workable enough just to solve the bureaucratic problem. It would also arguably make the process more democratic by increasing the number of people who are engaged in the decision making that the Supreme Court has to do. I'm one of the only Republicans asking for more Supreme Court justices, and I gotta spell it out for folks. I'm sorry, Joey. I think we more or less agree, though, on the idea that we need to get those spots filled up. I just wonder if... I guess the thing that trips me up is that it seems like fair is kind of going to the wayside. Should part of the progressive movement, which I consider myself a part of, be to, like, make that a thing again? Or should it be, like, we need to achieve results for the people and make things functional again in this country, and we need to, like... And I feel like that's the answer, right? And if I take that to its ultimate extreme, then, given that Trump has gotten to confirm so many, would it not arguably be more fair, more democratic, or at the very least, maybe lead to better outcomes? Because remember, I'm of the opinion that Democrats tend to produce somewhat better outcomes than Republicans. It's a little hairy sometimes, but you get the idea. So that's what trips me up. But ultimately, I wouldn't scoff at somebody that had your solution, right? I wouldn't scoff at a candidate that had your solution for it. By the way, just letting you guys know, next week, so starting tomorrow and until, next Monday, will be another, we'll call it a light week or a slow week, I guess. And every other week I have to kind of structure my things a little differently, because I have to wake up a lot earlier. So just keep that in mind. Results for the people within the lines. There will still be winners and losers of all political spheres. By the way, Vance apparently had a solution similar in school from colleagues. He may indeed have a good solution on that. I don't know if that necessarily translates to him having good solutions in other areas, but I'm willing to accept that he may have had a good idea here and there. Yeah, of course there's going to be winners and losers in every outcome, like in every situation, pretty much ever. But ultimately, I think that we should be trying to reduce the amount of losers by as much as possible, and like to try and you know what? Honestly, maybe the dichotomy of winners and losers is kind of a bad way to look at it. Because think about it, that kind of like sets you up for constant inerrant competition, or not inerrant, but unceasing competition. It sets you up to always be fighting with somebody else for supremacy, and I guess that is kind of like the political game. But I feel like the ultimate idea of both ends of the political spectrum is to eventually create a world in which those kinds of discussions, the kinds of discussions that we occupy ourselves with today, are no longer necessary. Now, I think that ultimately the right is completely wrong on how they think that would go down, and how they think it would be upheld and maintained. And I think that there are lots of weaknesses that you can easily point out. Whereas, like, the left's ultimate end goal is something that it acknowledges has never been achieved and can't be really achieved in any one person's one lifetime. That it's something you have to strive for, and that it's almost like an evolution of the human species when we eventually reach it. So, obviously, I've got, my biases in that direction, but I just wonder if looking at it through the framework of winners and losers kind of limits your advocacy and your ability to consider the future. Unceasing competition is good both in nature and our society. It encourages progress rather than stagnation. Competition of a kind, for sure, but just like general, constant, violent competition, not really. Constant bickering, angry, political competition, I don't know that really helps us. Yeah, I think sports is an example of a type of competition and a type of competitive behavior that tends to be healthy for human beings, and that we get a lot of enjoyment out of both participating in and watching. And there's lots of other things like that. Video games are another example of that. There's lots of things that I think are like that. And even all kinds of different areas of culture and food and art and shit like this can have that element. But I think, like, predicating the systems that dominate the world on the basis of competing on a national level, I think that's a negative behavioral trend. And I feel like that it's tied up in a sort of competitive behavior trend that is overall and generally negative, that pits people against one another, often for reasons of greed or injustice. And I think that kind of competition is bad, not because it isn't, like, it's bad for our health. I don't think it's unethical, but I on some level, but the ethics of it are definitely complicated, and it is definitely bad for our health. Just ask Charlie Kirk about that. While winning and losing is subjective, the goal would be to raise the tide for all ships and put people on an equal playing field legally. Exactly. That's how I look at it. Legally and financially, putting people on a baseline, even fucking playing field. What progress they make after that is going to be more or less up to them and how they were raised and everything, but at the very least, we shouldn't have people growing up in complete abject poverty with tarps on their roofs and shit. This is speaking from a man who's very much pro-capitalist, by the way, lol. Just takes into account human nature's need to compete against others. Yeah, I understand that. I just disagree with the idea that competition generally and broadly is always good, because I could think of a bunch of different ways that competition can be negative. But like many things, the dose makes the poison. Even though I'm like moving my legs, the kitty just kind of like moved her body a little bit, and she doesn't seem to care at all that I'm rocking her. Okay. She a wee baby, I guess. I guess so. Alright, kitty. Oh. Now I don't want to move her. Oh. Good kitty. Good kitty. She purring so loud. Ew. Okay, well, you're awake now. You can go. Goodbye. I want to smoke. Meow. Meow. Cutest little, tiniest little meow. Counterpoint, there will always be people who desire to be better than financially or otherwise, and we've seen that what that is wrought, but unless we re-educate people, I don't know how to fix it. Well, I think you do basically have to re-educate people, but I just don't think you do it through camps, right? And that's where most anarchists and a lot of leftists in general disagree with some kind of like authoritarian communist types, because there are people out there who genuinely believe that, like Vosh has made this argument before. I don't know if he genuinely believes this. I don't know if it's just exaggeration, but he literally talks about putting MAGA people in like re-education camps and shit, which used to be like the exclusive domain of CIA-funded tankies and shit. I'm joking, by the way, about the CIA-funded shit. They may be or they may not be. I don't know. It's just a joke, referencing the earlier conspiracy theorist. The weird anti-Semite person. But anyway, like, I think that the re-education happens successively through generations. It's not like you round everybody up in in like 10 years and make sure that after a process of learning and labor and all this, they, become good human beings. I don't think that's how it works. I think that progressive movements, as they achieve victories, have a tendency to make progressives out of the people who witness those victories. Let me repeat that again, just in case it came out of nowhere. Progressive movements and progressive victories tend to make progressives and leftists out of the people who see and participate in those victories. So that's why the biggest thing you can do to make a more progressive world is literally just joining your local org and participating with them and fighting like hell and genuinely engaging in it in good faith and everything, and trying to make your voice be heard, convince other people, because it really does. Like, that is the biggest thing that does it. that is what tends to, like that's why Bernie Sanders, one of the reasons why Bernie Sanders made so many progressives of people, because people saw how much of a change it made in Democratic Party politics, and people's mindsets and shit, and the way people were talking about things, and the type of language you were allowed to discuss openly in political discourse in America. And it really engaged people, and people got engaged on the fucking ground level too. There were all kinds of ground level grassroots activists for Sanders' campaign. These victories, and even sometimes losses, where there's a big enough movement and enough momentum, make progressives and leftists out of people who would not have otherwise gotten engaged. And it's a great way to increase the visibility of those movements, and to increase the chances that people decide themselves that they see a movement worth believing in, that they see a set of ideals worth pursuing. Progressive victories, leftist victories also have and the victories of secular humanists just broadly also help to demonstrate the virtue and the effectiveness of our viewpoints, right? So when you apply psychology to these problems, I think it's easy to get more hopeful about the state of the future, honestly. Because people are learning, and progressive victories are happening. I guarantee you, there have been 1 million progressives or leftists made out of the Mamdani campaign. And that's on the low end. It might be as many as 10 or 20 million people that were awakened to actual leftism and progressivism through Mamdani's campaign, that now don't look at socialist as a dirty word because of Mamdani's campaign. And victories like that are going to keep happening, and the best way you can contribute to that is by joining your local orgs, being active in your community, having these discussions with people that disagree with you. And that is how you achieve that re-education that we were talking about. It's not camps or gulags or any stupid shit like that. It's literally just winning the battles. While we're in this competitive environment, like we were talking about earlier, it's winning those battles, showing people how much better your ideas work, and then those people raise their kids to be progressive. And those kids raise their kids to be progressive, and so on and so forth. The idea of re-education sounds like it's holding one worldview over another. Marketplace of ideas is what we should be aiming for. I feel like marketplace of ideas is a good ideal on some level, but I feel like it does kind of suffer from manipulation as long as capitalism is allowed to be as dominant as it is. Like, you would have to agree with me, Joey. Who's got more power to influence? Me, as an independent creator here on YouTube, who would be fucked if YouTube decided to delete my channel or something like that? Or CNN, knock on wood, God, I hope they don't ever do that, but, or like CNN, right? The billionaire capitalist corporation that owns, like literal airspace and shit. Who's got more influence in that equation? Obviously the capitalist does. And I guess, like, even in a socialist world, there would be certain people with more access than others. But I like to think that in a truly democratic and socialist world that tried its best to live by those values, it would be a lot easier for somebody that didn't come from some long line of nobles and priests or some shit to make a name for themselves as a news presenter or a science presenter or an animator or whatever. Marketplace of Ideas also assumes everyone is as educated and even in touch with reality. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's got its criticisms. I think it's an ideal that I advocate for broadly, but that I am critical of specifically. Does that make sense? Probably not. Who else up contemplating mortality? Yeah, on Sanders' campaign, I had more people shift hard right when hearing him. Wild folks at those offices. It's weird. I think that Sanders' campaign did polarize people both ways, but I gotta tell you, I don't know how much you trust AI, but I have trained my particular, like the Gemini on my phone, I have trained it to be a pretty reliable source. And I say that because it has been probably a month since it just made up a fact, because I actively reprimand it when it does that, and I like encourage it every single time. Pretty much I make a request, or at least I did for a really long time, to specifically cite sources, and sometimes I still will if I want to be able to look at a specific type of source, right? But anyway, I just want to put this into perspective a little bit. How much of an effect did Bernie Sanders' campaign have on polarizing people towards the left? So, Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns significantly altered the landscape of American politics. Rather than simply creating polarization in a vacuum, political scientists and analysts generally view his impact through two distinct lenses: mainstream left-wing policies and fueling anti-establishment populism. Which, of course, is always going to be seen as a bad thing by any of the establishments, right? But I think that informed anti-establishment populism can sometimes be good, but I guess that it does, stand to reason. The source on that is Vanderbilt Library's View of Polarization, Populism, Bernie Sanders. Instead of forcing a single conclusion, his effect can be broken down into where he shifted the needle and where he exposed deep-seated friction. So, normalizing the Overton window on economics. The Overton window represents the range of ideas tolerated in public discourse. Before 2016, ideas like a $15 minimum wage, tuition-free public college, and a single-payer healthcare system, Medicare for all, were considered fringe or politically radioactive for mainstream Democrats. Sanders' campaigns aggressively pulled the center of the Democratic Party to the left on economics. By 2020, even moderate candidates had to adopt variations of his platform just to stay competitive. In this sense, he didn't just polarize people, he expanded the boundaries of what mainstream Democrats considered acceptable policy. Also from Vanderbilt Library. The rise of institutional polarization. So political science research indicates that Sanders' campaigns fostered a specific kind of polarization, insider versus outsider. Data from the 2016 convention delegate study and subsequent voter surveys showed that Sanders' base wasn't just ideologically distinct from moderate Democrats, they were profoundly distrustful of the political establishment. His populist rhetoric, pitting the billionaire class against everyday Americans, unintentionally widened a rift within the left. I don't know if I agree with this, but we'll see what it says. His ideological purists. His campaign socialized a wave of younger, deeply progressive voters to view the traditional Democratic Party not as an ally, but as an obstacle to true progressive change. They have been. Like, for the most part, they have been. It's not that they've never done anything good, but you can also point at lots of instances. See, I don't agree with this, or at least not how they're painting it, because they're acting like that's something that Bernie Sanders did in a vacuum by himself. I think Bernie Sanders' campaign got a lot more people talking about it, maybe got more people aware of it, but there have been people making those criticisms for years before Sanders' campaign came around. There were lots of people at the fucking, the 2008, or what was it, 2011? The Occupy Wall Street protests. I think it was 2011. Yeah, Occupy Wall Street had people making those criticisms. This leftward push triggered a powerful counter-response from centrist and moderate Democrats, which has continued on to this day, but the problem is that most centrist and moderate Democrats are still more progressive on a lot of stuff than moderate and centrist Democratic politicians. Worried that drifting too far left would alienate swing voters in general elections, when, ironically, the opposite has been true. What has actually happened is that as the Democratic Party has gone to the right, they have lost more and more voters. Even swing voters get, they just figure like, okay, well, if I'm going to vote for a Republican, I might as well vote for an actual Republican instead of Republican light. So that's one of the reasons why I strongly oppose the Democrats' fucking current leadership and like the way they've been doing things. You know, I like to think that I've got a pretty nuanced criticism of that party too. But anyway, while Sanders catalyzed, let's see, symmetrical. The right has moved much further to the extremes than the left over the past few decades. While Sanders catalyzed an organized, visible progressive movement, helping elevate figures like Alexander Ocasio-Cortez and boosting the Democratic Socialists of America, the broader Democratic electorate remained relatively anchored. Exit polls and voting data consistently show that a significant portion of the Democratic base, particularly older, black, and moderate working-class voters, proactively resisted the far-left shift, which is why Sanders ultimately lost both primaries to more centrist figures. The takeaway: Bernie Sanders didn't necessarily force moderate voters to become left-wing radicals. Instead, he gave a massive, restless segment of the population a vocabulary for their economic frustrations, permanently shifted the official Democratic platform leftward, and solidified a distinct progressive wing that remains in intense tug-of-war with the party's establishment. Okay, yeah, I think that was a pretty sound overview of that information, and maybe I do have a bit of rose-colored glasses when it comes to the 2016 and the 2020 Bernie campaigns, because it really did feel to me like both of those campaigns and some of the stuff that was happening around them, not just the campaigns, but stuff that was happening around them, some stuff that was tied to them, some stuff that wasn't, some stuff that was just happening because that was an opportune time. So, I don't know. Like, what is ultimately the difference between making more of a leftward movement out of the Democrats and taking people who probably voted Dem but didn't really have, like, coherent politics that they could, like, easily identify the class enemies and stuff like that? Like, what's the difference between that and, you know, what Jim and I said, which is like taking this like giant mass of uninformed voters or whatever? I don't know. It seems to me like it's, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And like the answer is somewhere along the lines of there has been a leftist and progressive shift, I think, in lots of people's mindset and in the range of acceptable political ideas to discuss. And I think if that wasn't true, then you wouldn't see the Republicans like bringing up such like radical leftist ideas, or what they paint as radical leftist ideas. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, and fighting against them, right? Like, you wouldn't even have people debating some of the things they're debating right now if it weren't for a leftward shift that must have affected quite a few people, because it's created like an entire change in the culture and what people are talking about, what they're considering. You know, one thing that never gets brought up in this legislation, or I'm sorry, in this conversation, because it's a matter of legislation that's often seen as libertarian in nature, is drug legalization, the end of the war on drugs, and cannabis legalization specifically. But cannabis legalization was championed first by Democrats. It was championed first by progressives and leftists, working with Democrats and doing, and sometimes working against centrist and moderate Dems to achieve change, sometimes first at the local level, then at the state level. And it's only been in the last 10 years, really the last 5 years, that the Republican Party has decided to mend their stance on weed and take a more libertarian stance on stuff. And even that represents an opportunistic shift leftward on a specific issue in order to affect a specific outcome. So yeah, I guess it's a difficult topic. I will say though, just to clarify, if anyone thinks I'm trying to be a hack or whatever, I don't care if my ideas are popular, frankly. I think they're right. And I would stand up for them, even if I were the only one doing so. unless someone could actually provide me a good argument for why I shouldn't. You know, there were times in Nazi Germany where the anti-fascists were the rarest fucking people. The people least agreed with by the people around them. The people most hated and hunted by the government besides the direct targets of their genocide. But those people were still correct. They were still the virtuous ones. And the legitimacy of their movement, in moral terms, had no bearing on how many people agreed with them. Or rather, I should say, how many people agreed with them had no bearing on the legitimacy, politically or well, at least ethically, of their movement. I feel like chat hasn't moved in a while. It's making me suspicious that we're buffing. Are we buffering? No, I guess we're not buffering. I think that bird endorsing him at that one rally was the moment for me where I saw change coming. Literally that moment, that huge viral moment was one of the most, like, it was one of the most transformative and magical moments of the fucking Bernie Sanders campaign. I can't believe that shit happened. And I can't believe he lost after that. The world is a vampire, dun, 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 set to drain, dun, dun, endorsed by a bird, dun, 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 but didn't get the nomination. 'Twas our desire to see him in that place. But now we found that the Dems have rigged the race, and now we know, because the parties show that they will interfere in what the people want to hear. Despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. I do think that song goes harder than perhaps any other song. Let me see here. By the way, the joke of the bird landing wasn't that he was endorsing, he wanted a handout, not my joke. Oh, okay, gotcha. I agree, but I still cried tears of joy for Trump winning. Populists had a voice regardless of left or right. Still remember that drive home from the comic store? Oh my god, I've never met a human being in my life that said they cried when Trump won. This really goes to show you, like, the amount of emotions that people pour into this. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I do the same thing when it comes to people that I really believe in. I don't know if I cried tears of joy when Mom Donnie won, but I know I was hella satisfied. I know I was, pretty glad about that. I know I don't think I had tears of joy when Joe Biden won, but I know I was pretty fucking relieved. But I think it goes to show you how much emotion people pour into these candidacies, and how much emotion people pour into their political lives and their political interest. It goes a lot deeper than some people think. Well, I worked my ass off for the campaign is why. Well, okay, fair enough. It'd be kind of funny if somebody had like caught it on film and you ended up in one of those compilations. Of course, you probably had a Maga hat on or something, but it'd be funny if you had ended up in one of those compilations about people crying about him winning, but on the other side. Because that shit was cringy, I'm not gonna lie. I did not cry when Trump won in 2024. I was just like, oh. There was one point at which I cried after Trump won. Back in 2025, but that was because RFK Jr. said some like wildly insane shit about autistic people and suggested that we'd be like put on a list or something, and I just started thinking about the implications of that, and I worked myself up, and anyway, that was probably a cringy moment too, but still. No, I had my comic store uniform on. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, hopefully you didn't get caught on film and end up in one of those compilations. Hopefully. Spinning in my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. Some people say Bernie lost the old-fashioned way. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna end the stream. But we're not going for long, because I stayed up till 3 p.m. yesterday. I'm trying to reset my sleep schedule, and I think I'm actually making progress, because I didn't wake up till 9:30 at night, which means I'm still wide awake. I'm still wide awake, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break for a while, smoke the rest of this bowl, watch some, I don't know, I'll watch something. Probably going to watch more of the old Villains mega show that I was watching earlier on Deep Fat Fried. I don't know, but I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna finish this bowl, I'm gonna watch that, and then what time is it now? About 4 a.m. Around 5 I'm gonna probably be booting up an ARC stream. It might be earlier than that, and I'm sorry that I'm making you guys wait all night for it, but if you're interested in watching me game and streaming and shit, check that out, because we're going to be doing the pilot stream later. Had 3 bosses, 1 Hillary lover, 1 Trump, and 1 wanted to see the USA burn. Shift changes on election night was fun. Oh, I bet. Oh, man, I bet. Oh, God, I bet that was tense. Oh, Lord, unless you guys had a really good relationship, I bet that was tense. Anyway, peace the fuck out.